Let's look at the famous, or rather infamous, Flak 88. Now this gun is by its designation an anti-aircraft gun, Flugabwehrkanone. Yet it earned most of its reputation during the war as a tank killer, or in some cases even beyond that, which is reflected by the insistence by many American infantrymen that they were being continuously shelled by 88s, when in fact they were almost always being bombarded by 105mm and 150mm howitzers, standard to a German divisional artillery regiment. This of course raises questions. First, was the Flak 88 maybe designed as a multi-purpose gun from the start? And second, if this was not the case, why was there armor-piercing ammunition available for it? So let's take a closer look. The Flak 88's history goes back to the First World War, where the 8.8cm caliber was seen as well suited for an anti-aircraft gun due to the combination of high muzzle velocity, the suitability for manual loading, and an existing naval gun of the same caliber. This resulted in the Flak 16, which was introduced in the First World War in the Imperial German Army, but due to the Versailles Treaty, development and production was stopped after the war. Yet even before the Nazis were in power, development of the new gun was started in 1928. Similarly, in 1930, the tactical requirement called for an anti-aircraft weapon that could engage aircraft at an altitude of 500 to 6,000 meters. In 1932, the role was defined as follows. As the main anti-aircraft weapon, guns of a caliber greater than 3.7 cm will be used by rear area and field air defense. It must be possible for the field anti-aircraft guns to advance into the combat zone of the artillery. Great mobility will have to compensate for numerical weakness. Note that the specification Flak 18 was a cover name similar to Leichte Feldhaubitze 18 and Leichtes Infanteriegeschütz 18. The number should suggest that these were weapons that were introduced in 1918. In reality, these weapons were usually introduced in the 1930s. Yet back to the topic at hand. Even in 1935 there is no mention for an anti-tank role. This is quite interesting, especially considering that in 1935 there was an evaluation on the possibility of using various weapons in the anti-tank role, in which both the 2cm and 3.7cm Flak were mentioned, but not a single statement was made about the possibility of using the 8.8cm Flak 18 in an anti-tank role. Interestingly enough, in 1937 there was a review for the anti-aircraft weapons. This resulted in the requirement that the high explosive shell was equipped with a contact fuse against ground targets, but still no mention of an armor-piercing shell, although these were discussed for both the 2cm and 3.7cm anti-aircraft guns. As such, Jentz concludes that 8.8cm Flak was developed solely as an anti-aircraft weapon without any consideration being given to its employment as an anti-tank weapon. Now if you want to learn more about how the Flak was used in its intended role, be sure to check out the video by Military Aviation History about it, since I will focus mainly on the anti-tank role. Now since the Flak 88 was solely designed as an anti-aircraft weapon, the question arises, how did the Germans in 1940 engage French and British tanks with the Flak 88 with armor-piercing shells? There's one interesting hint in the order of the 6th Army for Case Yellow, the invasion of France in 1940. Particularly about the role of the 2nd Flak Corps, it is noted that the 2nd Flak Corps supports the divisions of the 1st Waves, in particular the 4th Army Corps and the left wing of the 11th Army Corps in the attack over the Juliana Canal, the Mars section and the Albert Canal. Here the fight against the permanent combat installation pillboxes is paramount. Now what happened was that in 1938 the Flak was adapted for the use against so-called strong ground targets. And since mobility was a key issue, two approaches were introduced. There was one towed version behind a 8-ton Zugkraftwagen half-track and one with a self-propelled setup on the chassis of the 12-ton Zugkraftwagen, which nowadays is known among Warfighter players as Flakbus. For the later, the general instruction notes the 8.8cm Flak 18 of Selbstfahrerfette on self-propelled carriage is a very effective weapon and possesses great mobility. For this reason, it is used against fortified gun positions and other strong targets. It is also capable of engaging tanks at considerable range. Hence the reason for the armor-piercing ammunition for the Flak 88 was that it was in one point intended as a bunker buster, especially the self-propelled variant. Let's look at some general aspects of the Flak 88. One important focus was on mobility. As such, one key part of the Flak was the Sonderanhänger 202, the special trailer 202. So this is actually the Flak mounted on the trailer, whereas the deployed version would be rested on the ground with the 4 outriggers fixed to the ground. Note that the Flak could also be fired from the trailer if necessary, but only with a low angle, thus mainly against ground targets. And if you ever find yourself in the situation that you need to reload the Flak 88 with ammo, the one in yellow is the high explosive shell, while the one in black is the armor piercing shell. You know, just in case. Note that not all Flaks were equipped with that trailer. Additionally, some were issued with an armored shield. After employment in Belgium and France in May and June 1940, the commanding general of the 1st Flak Corps noted in the experience report dated 10th July 1940 that all anti-aircraft guns assigned to the Flak Corps must be provided with Schutzschilde, armor shields, or armored shields. Yet when they were used for AA defense on the home front, this was usually not the case. The next aspect is organization, because organization is good for you. The Flak 88 was usually organized in heavy batteries, which consists of 4 Flak 88 and 2 Flak with 2 cm for security and protection against low-flying aircraft. The role of the light Flak is best outlined by a non-official handbook for the AA gunner from 1941. The light Flak section, which is attached to every heavy battery, takes it upon itself to protect the battery not only in the fire position, but also on the march and in the deployment against low-level and dive bomb attacks. Since its 2 cm Flak is also used successfully in ground combat, the heavy battery in the light Flak section also has an excellent defensive weapon against tanks and armored cars. Similarly, both the Panzermuseum Munster in Germany and the Military History Park in Puka in Slovenia have a 2 cm Flak next to the 8 cm Flak. So if you're a supporter of the reunion of Flak families, you know where to go. Anyway, let's look at how an ideal setup of a heavy Flak battery looked like. First, in the back there would be a radio station. It should be offset considerable from the battery, so that in case the radio is located via radio direction finding, the battery is not in immediate danger. Ideally, the radio is connected via a telephone line with the Befehlsstelle 1, command post 1, which should be positioned at a point that allows the observation of the airspace. The key equipment for the command post was the Kommandogerät, literally command device, which was the principal fire director for the guns. This Kommandogerät was connected via electrical line to the distribution box, the Verteilerkasten, which connected the individual guns. Ideally, the distance was around 70 to 80 paces, Schritt away. Sadly, I could not find a conversion value for Schritt in an army regulation. Yet I found actually the average speed of a pigeon in those regulations. Well, if you ever wondered why Germany lost the war, I think we can put this question now to rest. But I digress. Furthermore, there should also be a command post 2, which was usually located between the guns. It had an auxiliary command device in case the first command post or device was not operable. Whereas command post 1 was connected with cable to the guns, the command post 2 used telephone line for communication. The light AA guns were positioned between the firing positions and the command post, each about 100 meters in front or behind. Now, vehicles and trailers should be positioned far off and in a dispersed manner to be protected from enemy fire. Now, there's one issue here, as you probably might suspect. This was an ideal setup for an anti-aircraft position, but not for a ground combat role. Since, well, you don't want to sit in the line of fire of your neighboring gun or be blocked by a friendly gun. Among other issues with this setup in ground combat. Now, for the ground combat setup, I sadly came across only one proper example, namely for a strong point setup in North Africa. The 80mm Flak would be in the center of the strong point and sighted in a way that it could provide 360-degree field of fire. For immediate protection, the strong point would also have a machine gun position, a 20mm Flak or a 50mm anti-tank gun, and also a mortar. Sadly, I did not find any setup for Flakbatterie in a ground combat setup that was not very abstract. To conclude, although the Flak 88 was originally designed purely as an anti-aircraft gun, its characteristics of rather high caliber, high muzzle velocity, and the resulting shallow ballistic curve made it an ideal weapon for engaging armored targets. At first it was intended as a bunker buster, but during the war it was soon put successfully in the anti-tank role, which it performed successfully in all kinds of theaters. Be sure to check out military aviation's history on the Flak in the AA role. If you like well-sourced content like this, consider supporting me. Thank you to the Military History Park of Yugoslavia and the Panzer Museum Munster, Germany for inviting me. Special thanks to Jack and Michael here for sending me books that enhance this video. Source in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.